The morning shift at Harmony's Rest started like any other day. Taeyong stood in his workshop, surrounded by broken machines and strange devices from 100 different worlds. His workbench was covered with tools, some human-made, and others designed for alien hands with too many fingers or claws instead of nails. The smell of oil and metal filled the air. Through the large window behind him, a beautiful purple and blue nebula painted the darkness of space with streams of color. Taeyong wiped his hands on his oil-stained work clothes and picked up a small alien device. It looked like a twisted piece of crystal, but it was actually a communication tool from the Zenti people. Someone had dropped it and cracked the core. Most repair shops would have thrown it away and told the owner to buy a new one, but not Taeyong. He believed everything could be fixed if you were patient enough and cared enough to try. The space station hummed with life around him. Harmony's Rest was not just a repair station. It was a meeting place for dozens of alien species. Humans ran the station, and they had built a reputation across the galaxy for one simple thing. They could fix anything. While other species would replace broken items, humans would take the time to repair them. This strange human habit had made the station famous. The door to his workshop slid open with a soft hiss. Hannah walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She was Taeyang's best friend and worked in the xenobiology department. Her job was to study how different alien species thought and behaved. "Big ship just docked," Hannah said, handing him a cup. "Draken transport. They hit some space debris on their way here. Nothing serious, but Miho is charging them premium rates for the quick repair." Taeyong smiled. Miho was the station administrator, always thinking about profit. But underneath his business-focused exterior, he was a good person who cared about making the station a safe place for everyone. "Drakenin?" Taeyong asked. "Don't see many of them around here. They're on their way to some diplomatic conference," Hannah explained. "Probably will be here for a few days while we fix their ship. There's a young one with them. Just a hatchling, really. Maybe equivalent to an 8-year-old human child." The Drakenin were fascinating creatures. They looked like the dragon from old Earth legends, with scales that shimmered in different colors and large wings folded against their backs. They could live for hundreds of years and had a special ability. They could sense emotions that were attached to objects. If someone loved something deeply, a Drakenin could feel that love just by touching the object. Several hours passed as Taeyong worked on various repairs. He fixed the Zenti communication crystal, repaired a broken gravity regulator for a Methrin trader, and adjusted the calibration on a star mapping device. It was detailed work that required patience and steady hands. The afternoon was quiet until he heard sounds coming from the salvage bay next to his workshop. The salvage bay was where the station kept all the old, broken, or discarded items that came through. Most of it was junk waiting to be recycled, but Taeyong liked to search through it sometimes. He had found amazing treasures in that pile of trash. Ancient Earth artifacts, alien art pieces, and rare machine parts. Curious about the noise, Taeyong walked the doorway and looked into the salvage bay. A group of young aliens were exploring the area, clearly children from the various ships docked at the station. They were supervised by a large Drakenin adult whose scales shimmered in deep blue and silver colors. This must be the elder Hannah had mentioned. Most of the children were poking at the junk piles with curiosity, but one small Drakenin had stopped moving. The young one's scales were bright green with hints of gold, much more vibrant than the elders. The hatchling stood perfectly still, staring down at something in a bin of old Earth items. Taeyong watched as the small Drakenin reached into the bin with careful claws and pulled out an old metal toy airplane. Even from a distance, Taeyong could see it was damaged. One wing bent at an odd angle, the propeller missing and the paint chipped and faded. The young Drakenin held the toy plane like it was made of precious crystal. The hatchling's large eyes grew wide, and a soft chirping sound came from their throat. It was a sound of wonder and sadness mixed together. The elder Drakenin noticed and walked over. His voice was deep and rumbling when he spoke. "Skylith, put that back. It is broken trash. Come along with the others." But Skylith did not put the airplane back. Instead, the young Drakenin pulled it closer to their chest and made a different sound. This was a protective growl, like a small animal guarding something precious. "Skylith," the elder said more firmly, "that object is damaged beyond use. It has no value. Leave it here. The young Drakenan's eyes filled with tears. Their small body trembled, but they held onto the toy airplane even tighter. Taeyong could see the absolute refusal in every line of Skyleth's small frame. This child was not going to let go. The elder, whose name was Varix, looked uncomfortable. Other species on the station were starting to notice the scene. A Drakenan elder could not be seen struggling with a hatchling over a piece of trash. It would be embarrassing. Taeyong stepped forward quietly. He recognized the toy airplane. It was a model of AP-51 Mustang, a fighter plane from Earth's past. These toys had been popular hundreds of years ago. This one must have been in the salvage for a very long time. Elder Varix noticed Taeyong and seemed relieved to see a human authority figure. "Excuse me," Varix said with stiff politeness. "My young charge has become attached to this damaged item from your salvage. I apologize for the disturbance. I will remove them immediately." Taeyong looked at Skyleth. The young Drakenan was staring at him with huge, frightened eyes. Those eyes begged him not to take the airplane away. "It's okay," Taeyong said gently. "The child can keep it if they want. It's just going to be recycled anyway." Varix blinked in surprise. "You would allow this? But it is broken. It has no function." Taeyong smiled. "Sometimes things don't need to work to be important. If it matters to Skyleth, then it has value." Skyleth's expression changed from fear to hope. The young Drakenan looked down at the toy airplane, then back at Taeyong, then at Elder Varix. Varix seemed confused by this human attitude, but nodded. "Very well. Thank you for your generosity. Come, Skyleth." The young Drakenan followed the elder, but walked very carefully, as if the slightest bump might damage the precious airplane even more. Skyleth held it with such gentle care that Taeyong felt something warm in his chest. He understood that feeling. He had felt it himself many times when working on old, broken things. It was a feeling that this object had been loved once. Someone had cared about it. And even though it was damaged now, that love still remained somehow, waiting to be honored. As Taeyong returned to his workshop, he thought about the P-51 Mustang toy. He wondered about the human child who had owned it so long ago. Had they played with it every day? Had they imagined flying through clouds and soaring over mountains? Had they dreamed of becoming a pilot? Those dreams were still trapped in that broken toy. And somehow, across the vast distance of space and time, a young alien with shimmering scales had felt them too. Skyleth had felt the love and joy that once surrounded that simple metal airplane. That evening, Taeyong finished his work and cleaned his tools. As he locked up the workshop, he glanced toward the docking area where the Drakenan ship was being repaired. Somewhere in the guest quarters, a small dragon child was probably curled up around a broken toy airplane, protecting it like the greatest treasure in the galaxy. And maybe it was 3 days passed since Skyleth found the broken airplane. The repairs on the Drakenan ship were finished, and the vessel was ready to depart. But there was a problem. A big problem. Skyleth refused to leave. Elder Varix stood in the guest quarters, looking down at the small Drakenan who had curled into a tight ball in the corner of the room. The young one's bright green and gold scales seemed to have lost some of their shine. Skyleth's wings were wrapped protectively around the broken toy airplane, hiding it from view. "Skyleth, we must go," Varix said for the 10th time that morning. His voice was patient but tired. "The conference cannot wait. Your parents are expecting us." The young Drakenan made a low, sad humming sound. It was the only response Varix had gotten for days. Skyleth would not speak, would not eat much, would only stay curled around that damaged human toy, making soft chirping and humming noises. Varix sighed deeply. He did not understand this behavior at all. In Drakenan culture, broken things were treated with respect and then let go. When something could not be fixed, it was given an honorable farewell and replaced. Holding on to broken objects was seen as dwelling in the past, preventing growth and progress. But Skyleth was young and going through an important development stage. Sometimes young Drakenan formed deep connections with objects that carried strong emotions. Their telepathic senses were still learning to process all the feelings they detected in the world around them. Usually, this phase passed quickly with guidance. This time felt different. Varix had tried everything he could think of. He had offered Skyleth beautiful new toys from the station's shops, crystal sculptures that sang when touched, holographic games with stunning graphics, even a small drone that could fly around the room performing tricks. Skyleth had looked at each gift with dull eyes and turned back to the broken airplane. The elder knew he needed help. He needed someone who understood what was happening to Skyleth, someone who studied how different minds worked. He contacted Hannah. When Hannah arrived at the guest quarters an hour later, she found Varix standing outside the door, looking worried and embarrassed. For a proud Draconin elder to admit he could not handle a young one was difficult. "Thank you for coming," Varix said formally. "I apologize for disturbing you with such a minor matter." Hannah smiled warmly. "It's not a minor matter if Skyleth is distressed. May I observe?" Varix opened the door quietly. Inside, Skyleth remained in the same position, curled tightly with wings covering the toy plane. The young Draconin's eyes were open but unfocused, staring at nothing. Hannah studied the scene carefully. She had spent years learning about Draconin psychology and development. She recognized this behavior immediately. "Elder Varix," she said softly, "Skyleth is not just attached to the object. The child is mourning." Varix looked confused. "Mourning? But nothing has died." "Young Draconins feel emotional imprints very strongly," Hannah explained. Skyleth touched that airplane and felt all the love and dreams that were attached to it. A human child once treasured that toy. They imagined adventures with it. They felt joy holding it. All those emotions are still there, trapped in the metal. She paused and looked at the small figure in the corner. But Skyleth also feels that the airplane is broken. The dreams are damaged. The love is fading. To a young Draconin with developing empathic senses, this feels like watching something beautiful die slowly. Skyleth is trying to protect it, to keep those emotions from disappearing completely. Varix was silent for a long moment. His people value perfection and completeness. The idea of mourning something that was already broken seemed strange to him, but he was wise enough to understand that different species saw the world differently. "What can be done?" he asked. Hannah thought carefully. "In Draconin culture, you honor broken things and then let them go. But humans have a different way. We try to fix things. We restore them. We believe that broken things can be made whole again." "You mean repair the toy?" Varix asked. "Is that even possible?" "I know someone who could try," Hannah said. "Taeyong, the mechanic who gave Skyleth permission to keep the airplane. He specializes in restoring old Earth artifacts." Varix looked skeptical. "But the toy is very old and badly damaged. Would it not be easier to simply make a new one that looks the same?" Hannah shook her head. "That would not work. Skyleth doesn't just care about how the airplane looks. The child cares about the emotions attached to the specific airplane, the love and dreams that human child left behind. A new toy would not have those same feelings." The elder looked at Skyleth again. The young one had not moved, had not acknowledged their conversation at all. This was not like the cheerful, curious hatchling who had started this journey with him. "Very well," Varix said quietly. "I will speak with this human mechanic. Though I confess, I do not understand how repairing a broken toy will help. In my culture, we believe accepting loss and moving forward is healthier than trying to restore what cannot truly be brought back." Hannah smiled gently. "Perhaps both approaches have value. Sometimes letting go is right, but sometimes fixing what is broken is an act of love and respect. It honors what came before while creating something new." They left the quarters and walked through the station corridors toward Taeyang's workshop. The station was busy with activity. Aliens of many species moved through the halls, speaking in various languages, conducting business, and enjoying the neutral meeting ground that Harmony's rest provided. As they walked, Varix noticed something he had not paid attention to before. Many of the shops and stalls displayed repaired items alongside new ones. A Zenti merchant sold restored communication crystals. A Methrin trader offered rebuilt navigation systems. Even the station itself showed signs of repair and restoration rather than replacement. Humans seem to have a cultural practice of fixing things instead of throwing them away. Varix found this curious. His people would see it as inefficient. Why spend time and effort repairing when you could simply create something new and better. But then he thought about Skyleth. The young one had not wanted something new and better. Skyleth wanted that specific broken airplane, with all its scratches and damaged parts, because those imperfections were part of its story, part of the emotions it carried. Maybe humans understood something about value that Draconans did not. They reached Taiyang's workshop. Through the window, Varix could see the human working on a complicated piece of machinery. His movements were careful and precise. He handled the broken device like it was precious, not like it was trash. Hannah knocked on the door frame. Taeyong looked up and smiled when he saw her. His smile faded slightly when he noticed a large Draconan elder standing behind her. The mechanic quickly wiped his hands and came to greet them. "Taeyong, this is Elder Varix," Hannah said. "He needs your help with something important." Varix stood tall and formal. He was not comfortable asking for help, especially from a species his people still did not fully understand. But for Skyleth, he would put aside his pride. "Greetings, Mechanic Taeyong," Varix said with stiff politeness. "I come to you regarding a matter of some delicacy. It concerns a young one, Skyleth, and a damaged toy you permitted them to keep." Taeyong listened as Varix explained the situation. The elder spoke about Skyleth's refusal to eat or leave, about the deep attachment that seemed to go beyond normal childhood behavior, about his own confusion regarding why a broken toy had such power over the young Draconan. As Varix spoke, Taeyang's expression changed. The mechanic's eyes showed understanding and something else. Compassion. Not pity, but genuine care. When Varix finished, Taeyong was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that surprised the elder. "May I meet with Skyleth?" Taeyong asked, "I would like to see the airplane and talk with the child, if that is acceptable to you." Varix hesitated. Then he nodded. "Very well. But I warn you, Skyleth has been quite protective. The young one may not allow you close to the toy." Taeyong smiled softly. "Then I will not try to take it. I will just talk. Sometimes that is all that is needed." The door to the guest quarters slid open quietly. Taeyong stepped inside, followed by Hannah and Elder Varix. The room was dim, with only soft lighting from the window showing the purple nebula outside. Skyleth was still curled in the corner, exactly as before. The young Draconan's wings were wrapped tightly around the broken toy airplane. When the door opened, Skyleth's head lifted slightly. The child's large eyes focused on the newcomers, and a low warning hiss came from their throat. Taeyong stopped walking. He did not move closer. Instead, he slowly sat down on the floor, still several feet away from Skyleth. Hannah and Varix stayed near the door, watching carefully. For a long moment, no one spoke. Taeyong just sat there, calm and patient. He did not reach for the airplane, did not demand anything. He simply waited. Skyleth watched him with suspicious eyes. The young Draconan had learned that adults usually want to take things away. They said it was for your own good. They said you would understand when you were older, but they never really listened. This human was different somehow. He was not moving, not demanding, just sitting. After several minutes of silence, Taeyong spoke. His voice was soft and gentle, like he was talking to a friend instead of a child. "That is a P-51 Mustang," he said, looking at the small bit of metal wing visible between Skyleth's claws. "It is a very special kind of airplane. Humans built them a long, long time ago on Earth." Skyleth's hissing stopped. The young one was listening. "These planes flew through the sky," Taeyong continued, his eyes distant as if he could see the past. "They were fast and brave. Pilots who flew them loved their planes. They gave them names. They painted pictures on them. They talked to them like friends." He paused and added, "The toy you are holding is a copy of those real planes. Some human child, many years ago, probably played with it every day. They probably made sounds like the engine, probably flew it around their room, imagining they were soaring through clouds." Skyleth's wings shifted slightly. A tiny bit more of the airplane became visible. The young Draconan was still protective, but less defensive now. "I can feel them," Skyleth whispered suddenly. It was the first time the child had spoken in days. The voice was small and sad. "I can feel the human child who loved this. They were happy. They had so many dreams." Taeyong nodded slowly. Yes, objects can carry feelings, especially things that were loved very much. But it is broken, Skyleth said, and there were tears in those large eyes. The dreams are fading. The happiness is dying. I can feel it getting weaker every day. I try to hold it, to keep it safe, but I do not know how to stop it from disappearing. The young Draken's voice cracked. When it is gone completely, it will be like that human child's dreams never existed at all. Like all that love and joy was wasted. I cannot let that happen. I have to protect it. Taeyong felt a warm tightness in his chest. He understood now. Skyleth was not just attached to a toy. The child was trying to save something precious from being forgotten forever. Skyleth, Taeyong said gently, what if I told you there's a way to help? Not by holding the airplane and watching it fade, but by making it whole again. The young Drakenin looked at him with confusion. Make it whole? But Elder Varric said broken things cannot be truly fixed. He said once something is damaged, we must honor it and let it go. That is one way, Taeyong agreed, and it is a good way for many things. But humans have another way. We call it restoration. We take broken things and carefully repair them. We make them work again. We bring them back to life. Skyleth's eyes widened. You can do that? You can fix the airplane? I can try, Taeyong said. It will take time. It will take patience. And it will take very careful work. But yes, I believe I can restore it. The young Drakenin was quiet for a moment, hope and fear mixing in those expressive eyes. But if you take it away from me, what if something happens? What if it breaks more? What if the feelings disappear while I am not there to protect them? Taeyong smiled. Then you will not leave it alone. You will come with me to my workshop. You will help me repair it. I will teach you how to fix things the way humans do. Together, we will make the airplane whole again. Skyleth stared at him. No adult had ever offered to let the young one help with something important before. Usually, adults said children were too small, too clumsy, too likely to make mistakes. You would teach me? Skyleth asked quietly. You will let me help? Yes, Taeyong said simply. Restoration is not just about fixing objects. It is about honoring what they represent, understanding their story, respecting the emotions they carry. You already understand these things better than most adults I know. You will be a good student. Slowly, very slowly, Skyleth's wings began to open. The broken toy airplane was revealed fully for the first time. It looked even more damaged than Taeyong had remembered. The wing was badly bent. The propeller was completely missing. The paint was chipped in dozens of places. But Taeyong did not flinch or look disappointed. Instead, he leaned forward slightly, studying the airplane with the same careful attention he would give to any precious artifact. May I look at it more closely? He asked. I will not take it from you. You can hold it while I examine it. Skyleth hesitated, then nodded. The young Drakenin held out the airplane, but kept it in their claws. Taeyong moved closer, kneeling beside Skyleth. He looked at the toy from different angles, gentle and respectful. The wing can be straightened, he said thoughtfully. The propeller, I will need to make a new one, but I can match the style. The paint will be the most detailed work. It needs to be exact to match the original colors. He looked at Skyleth. This will take several weeks. We will work on it a little bit each day. We cannot rush. Restoration requires patience. Are you willing to be patient? Skyleth nodded eagerly. Yes, I can be patient. I will do whatever is needed. From the doorway, Elder Varric watched this exchange with amazement. He had expected a human to simply take the toy and fix it in some workshop while Skyleth waited. But instead, Taeyong was treating the young one as a partner, an equal in this work. It was a very human approach, collaborative, respectful of everyone involved. Taeyong stood up and extended his hand toward Skyleth. Then let us go to my workshop. I will show you the tools we will use. We will make a plan together for how to restore your airplane. Skyleth carefully stood up, wings tucking against a small body. The young Drakenin held the airplane close, but no longer with the desperate grip from before. Now it was held with hope instead of fear. They walked together out of the guest quarters. Hannah and Varric followed at a distance, giving them space. As they moved through the station corridors, something remarkable happened. Other beings stopped to watch. They saw a human mechanic walking slowly to match the pace of a small alien child. They saw the child holding a piece of broken metal like it was made of starlight. And they saw something else too. They saw trust. When they reached the workshop, Taeyong opened the door wide. "Welcome to my workspace," he said. "Everything here is for fixing things, for making broken objects whole again, for honoring what they once were and helping them become beautiful once more." Skyla stepped inside and looked around with wide eyes. The workshop was full of tools, machines, and partially repaired items. Some were human objects. Others were alien devices from species Skyla had never seen before. "You fix things from everywhere," Skyla said with wonder. "Yes," Taeyong said, "because every broken thing has value. Every damaged object carries a story, and every story deserves to be preserved." He cleared a space on his workbench and pulled over a small stool for Skyla to sit on. "Now," he said with a warm smile, "let us begin. First, I will teach you about the tools. Then we will examine your airplane together and make our restoration plan." Skyla climbed onto the stool, carefully placing the broken P-51 Mustang on the workbench. For the first time in days, the young Draconin smiled. The healing had begun. 3 weeks had passed since Skyleth and Taeyong began working together. The workshop had become a second home for the young Draconin. Every morning, Skyleth arrived carrying the broken airplane with careful claws. Every evening, the child would leave with it, keeping it safe through the night. The first week had been about learning. Taeyong taught Skyleth about the different tools. There were tiny screwdrivers for delicate work, magnifying glasses to see small details, gentle hammers for shaping metal, brushes so fine they had only a few hairs. Skyleth had been worried at first. The young one's claws seemed too big and clumsy for such delicate tools. But Taeyong showed patience and encouragement. "Your claws are different from my hands," Taeyong had said, "but different is not bad. Watch how you can grip things in ways I cannot. See how your telepathic senses let you feel where the metal is stressed before it even shows cracks. You have gifts I do not have." And it was true. Skyleth discovered that being a Draconin brought special advantages to restoration work. The young one could sense weak points in metal, could feel when paint was applied too thick or too thin, could detect the emotional resonance growing stronger as the airplane slowly became whole again. The second week, they worked on the wing. It was bent at a sharp angle, looking painful even to someone who could not feel emotions in objects. Taeyong explained they would need to heat the metal carefully and straighten it slowly. "If we rush, the metal will crack," he said. "We must be patient, a little bit each day." Skyleth learned to use the small heating tool, learned to warm the metal just enough, not too much, learned to apply gentle pressure, watching as the wing slowly began to straighten. It took 6 days to fix the wing completely. 6 days of careful work, of patience, of trusting the process. When it was finally straight and strong again, Skyla felt such joy that the young one's scales shimmered brighter than ever before. The propeller was next. The original was lost forever, so Taeyong had to create a new one. He used a machine called a molecular printer that could build objects atom by atom. But first, they needed to know exactly what the propeller should look like. Taeyong searched through older databases, finding pictures and blueprints of P-51 Mustang toys from the era this one was made. He showed Skyleth how to take measurements from the airplane's nose where the propeller should attach. Together, they designed the perfect replacement. When the new propeller was printed, Skyleth held it with wonder. It was shiny and perfect, matching the original design exactly. The young Draconin carefully attached it to the airplane, and for the first time in centuries, the propeller could spin freely. "It moves," Skyleth whispered, giving it a gentle spin. "It is alive again." Taeyong smiled. "Yes, one more step remains. The most important step. The paint." This was the most detailed and patient work of all. The original paint was faded and chipped, but traces remained. Taeyong taught Skyleth how to mix colors, combining different pigments until they matched exactly. Military green for the body, silver for the underside, red and white for the tail markings. They had to apply the paint in very thin layers. Each layer needed to dry completely before adding the next. It required patience that tested even Skyleth's newfound discipline. Why so many layers? Skyleth asked one day, watching paint dry for what felt like the 100th time. Because restoration is not just about making something look fixed, Taeyong explained. It is about bringing it back to life properly. Each layer of paint is like giving the airplane back its dignity, piece by piece. We cannot rush dignity. Skyleth understood. The young one could feel it through telepathic senses. With each layer of paint, the emotional resonance of the airplane grew stronger. The love and dreams that had been fading were returning, growing brighter. Other residents of the station began to notice what was happening in the workshop. Young aliens from various species would peek through the window, watching Taeyong and Skyleth work together. Some asked if they could observe more closely. Taeyong always said yes. The workshop became a gathering place. A Zenti child learned how to repair their broken communication crystal. A young Methrin discovered the joy of fixing an old family heirloom. Even a Korvaxi teenager, whose species normally threw away anything imperfect, started to see value in restoration. Elder Varix watched all of this from a distance. He came to the workshop often, though he pretended he was just checking on Skyleth. In truth, he was learning something profound. His people, the Draconans, had always believed that perfection was the highest goal. When something broke, it failed to be perfect, and therefore should be retired with honor. But watching Taeyong and Skyleth work, Varix began to understand a different truth. Perhaps being broken and then repaired created a different kind of perfection. Perhaps the scars of damage, when carefully healed, told a story that unblemished perfection never could. One afternoon, Varix approached Taeyong while Skyleth was carefully painting tiny details on the airplane's tail. "I must apologize," the elder said quietly. Taeyong looked surprised. "Apologize? For what?" "When I first came to you, I thought this was foolishness," Varix admitted. "I thought spending weeks fixing a broken toy was a waste of time. I thought you should simply make a new one, or convince Skyleth to let go. I did not understand. And now," Taeyong asked gently. Varix looked at Skyleth, who was humming happily while working. The young one who had been withdrawn and sad was now full of light and purpose. "Now I see that restoration is not about the object," Varix said. "It is about respect, patience, honoring what came before. And perhaps most importantly, it is about teaching these values to the next generation." Taeyong nodded. Skyleth has learned to fix a broken airplane. But more than that, Skyleth has learned that broken things are not worthless. That damage is not the end of the story. That with care and time, almost anything can be made whole again. These are valuable lessons, Varix agreed, for any species. News of the restoration project spread through the station and beyond. Ships docking at Harmony's rest heard about the human mechanic and the Draconan child working together. Some captains delayed their departures just so their young ones could visit the workshop and learn. Miho, the station administrator, noticed the increase in visitors. His business mind immediately saw opportunity, but his heart saw something more important. He approached Taeyong with an idea. "What you are doing here is special," Miho said. "It is bringing different species together, teaching cooperation and patience. Maybe we should make this permanent, a dedicated space for cultural restoration and learning." Taeyong was surprised but pleased. "You mean like a school?" "More than a school," Miho explained. "A place where beings from across the galaxy can bring damaged items of cultural importance, where they can learn to preserve their heritage, where repair is seen not as a shameful necessity, but as an act of love and respect." It was a beautiful idea, but Taeyong looked at Skyleth, still working carefully on the tiny airplane. "Let us finish this restoration first," Taeyong said with a smile. "One step at a time, one project at a time. That is how good work is done." Finally, after 3 full weeks of patient work, the last detail was complete. Skyleth set down the tiny brush and stepped back from the workbench. The P-51 Mustang sat there, whole and beautiful. Its wings were straight and strong. Its propeller gleamed and spun freely. Its paint shone with military green and silver, every marking precise and correct. It looked exactly as it must have looked when it was first made, centuries ago. But to Skylata's senses, it was more than just restored. The love and dreams that had been fading were now burning bright, and mixed with those original emotions were new ones. The patience of restoration, the pride of learning, the bond between a young alien and a kind human who had taught that broken things deserve a second chance. Tears rolled down Skylata's scaled cheeks. But these were not tears of sadness. These were tears of joy. "Thank you," the young Draconin whispered to Taeyong. "Thank you for teaching me, for believing I could help, for showing me that broken things can fly again." Taeyong placed a gentle hand on Skylata's shoulder. "You did the work. I just showed you how. You have the gift now. You can help other broken things, whenever you find them." Skylata looked down at the restored airplane, then up at Taeyong with shining eyes. "I want to learn more. I want to become a restoration specialist. I want to help preserve the precious things of the galaxy, just like you do." And in that moment, watching a young alien discover their purpose and passion, Taeyong knew that this was why humans fix broken things, not just to repair objects, but to repair spirits, to teach hope, to show that nothing is ever truly lost if someone cares enough to save it. The observation deck of Harmony's Rest was filled with beings from a dozen different species. They had come from all over the station to witness something special. The large windows behind them showed the magnificent purple and blue nebula, but today everyone was looking inward, not outward. At the center of the deck stood a clear display case on a pedestal. Inside the case, the restored P-51 Mustang toy airplane floated gently, suspended in a soft anti-gravity field. Its propeller spun slowly, catching the light. The military green paint gleamed. Every detail was perfect. But the airplane was not just sitting still. Taeyong had built a special display system. The anti-gravity field was programmed to move the plane in gentle loops and circles, as if it were flying through invisible skies. It banked and turned, climbed and dove, forever soaring in its small space. Skyla stood beside the display case, scales shimmering with pride and joy. The young Draconin wore a small badge that Miho had made specially. It read, "Apprentice Restoration Specialist," in multiple languages. Hannah stepped forward to address the gathered crowd. Her voice was warm and clear. "Thank you all for coming today," she said. "We are here to celebrate something that started as a simple act of kindness and became a lesson for all of us, a lesson about patience, respect, and the value of broken things." She gestured to the airplane. "This toy is over 400 years old. It was broken, discarded, lost in space debris. Most would have seen it as garbage. But one young Draconin saw something else. Skyla felt the love and dreams that this object carried and refused to let them fade away. The crowd listened quietly, respectfully. Among them were Draconins who had arrived specifically for this event. Other young aliens stood with their parents, eyes wide with interest. Elder Varric stepped forward next. His deep blue and silver scales caught the light as he moved. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority, but also something new, humility. "I stand before you to admit something difficult," Varric said. "I was wrong. My people, the Draconins, have long believed that broken things should be honored and released. We saw holding on to damaged objects as a failure to accept reality and move forward." He paused, looking at Skyleth with fondness. "But watching this young one work with the human Taeyong, I have learned a new truth. Restoration is not about denying that something was broken. It is about respecting what it was, acknowledging what it survived, and giving it the chance to be whole again." Varric turned to face the crowd fully. "Perhaps what is repaired carries more value than what was never damaged. The scars of repair tell a story of survival and care. They prove that something was loved enough to save." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. Several beings nodded their heads, or made equivalent gestures in their own body language. Taeyong stood quietly to the side, not seeking attention, but Miho pulled him forward gently. "The humans of this station have taught us many things," Miho said, "but perhaps the most important is this. Nothing is truly worthless. Everything has a story. Everything deserves respect. And with enough patience and care, almost anything can be restored." He smiled at Taeyong, "which is why I am pleased to announce the creation of the Cultural Restoration Center. A new wing of Harmony's Rest dedicated to preserving and repairing objects of emotional and historical significance from across the galaxy. The crowd erupted in approving sounds. Clicks, chirps, hums, and even some human applause filled the observation deck. Taeyong will lead the center, Miho continued. And I am happy to say that our first official apprentice will be Skyleth, who has already shown remarkable talent and dedication. Skyleth's scales shimmered so brightly they almost glowed. The young Draconin looked up at Taeyong with pure happiness. Then Hannah raised her hand for attention once more. There is something else, she said. While researching this airplane for the restoration, I discovered its history, and it is quite remarkable. She activated a holographic display that showed images and text floating in the air above the crowd. An old photograph appeared, showing a young human boy with dark hair and a bright smile, holding the very same toy airplane. This is James Keller, Hannah explained. He lived in Seattle on Earth in the year 2045. He received this toy airplane as a gift on his 7th birthday. According to old family records, he carried it everywhere. He dreamed of becoming a pilot and flying among the stars. The hologram changed to show a grown man in a space uniform, the same bright smile on his face. James Keller did become a pilot, Hannah said softly. In fact, he became one of humanity's first interstellar explorers. He was part of the crew on the Pioneer's Hope, the third human ship to travel beyond our solar system. Gasps and surprised sounds came from the audience. This was more than just an old toy. This was a piece of history. James kept his childhood toy with him. Hannah continued. It traveled through space as a good luck charm, a reminder of his dreams. According to ship logs, it was displayed in his quarters during the entire mission. The hologram showed the interior of a spaceship, and there on a small shelf, the P-51 Mustang sat proudly. The airplane was lost during a cargo transfer accident in the year 2089, Hannah said. It drifted in space for over 300 years before being recovered in debris near the station. James Keller passed away many years ago, but his descendants still live on Earth and in various colonies. She smiled. I contacted them. They are grateful that this family treasure has been restored. They have agreed that it should remain here, at Harmony's Rest, as the first piece in the Cultural Restoration Center's collection. Skyless stared at the floating airplane with new understanding. This was not just a toy that carried one child's dreams. It was a symbol of humanity's journey to the stars. It represented the exact hope and ambition that led to stations like this one existing. Places where different species could meet, learn from each other, and work together. The young Draconin felt tears on scaled cheeks again. But these were tears of wonder. I protected it because I felt the dreams inside, Skyla said quietly. I did not know those dreams helped bring humans to space. Did not know this little airplane was part of something so big. Taeyong knelt down beside Skyleth. You felt what mattered most, he said gently. You felt that it was loved, that it carried hope. The specific history is wonderful to know, but what you sensed was the important part. Love, dreams, hope. These things are universal. They matter to every species. The ceremony continued with other speakers, sharing their thoughts about restoration and preservation. But Skyleth barely heard them. The young one stood gazing at the airplane, watching it fly its eternal loops. Later, as the crowd dispersed, beings began approaching Taeyong and Skyleth. They brought items wrapped in cloth or carried in protective cases. A Zenti elder had a cracked family heirloom. A Methrin trader carried a broken navigation tool that belonged to their grandfather. A young Korvaxi held a damaged musical instrument. Can you help us too? They asked. Can you restore what we thought was lost? Taeyong looked at each item with respect. We will try, he said. Restoration takes time and patience. But if you are willing to work with us, to learn the process, then yes, we will help you. Skyla stood tall beside him. No longer a sad child protecting a broken toy, but an apprentice ready to learn and help others. The young Draconin had found a purpose, a calling. In the days that followed, the Cultural Restoration Center opened its doors. It occupied a new wing of the station with workbenches, tools, and display cases for completed restorations. Young beings from various species applied to become apprentices, wanted to learn the art of bringing broken things back to life. The P-51 Mustang remained in its place of honor in the observation deck, flying endlessly, reminding everyone who passed by that dreams can survive anything, that love can outlast centuries, that broken things are not trash, but treasures waiting to be restored. Skylar visited the airplane every day, sometimes bringing other young apprentices to see it. The young Draconin would tell them the story, how finding this broken toy had felt like mourning, how a kind human had taught patience and skill, how restoration was not just about fixing objects, but about honoring memories and preserving hope. And every time Skylar told the story, the young one's telepathic senses would feel the emotions radiating from the airplane, the original love of a child named James, the dreams that carried him to the stars, the patience of careful restoration, the joy of being made whole. But there was something new there too, something that had not existed before. It was the emotion that Skyleth and Taeyong had added during the restoration, the proof that when different species work together with respect and care, they can achieve beautiful things. One evening, as the station's artificial day cycle was ending, Skylar stood alone in the observation deck. The young Draconin watched the toy airplane fly its gentle loops against the backdrop of the nebula. Taeyong found Skylar there and stood beside the young one quietly. "Thank you," Skylar said softly, "for not telling me to let go, for understanding why I had to protect it, for teaching me how to make it whole again." Taeyong smiled. "You taught me something too. You reminded me why restoration matters. It is not just about preserving the past. It is about giving broken things a chance to fly again." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the P-51 Mustang soar through its eternal sky, a dragon child and a human mechanic, a student and a teacher, friends bound by the simple truth that broken things deserve love, patience, and the chance to be whole once more. And somewhere in the vast galaxy on a distant Earth, the descendants of James Keller looked up at the stars and smiled, knowing that his childhood toy was flying again, watched over by those who understood that dreams never truly die. They just wait for someone kind enough to give them wings.